I'm Nancy Gillis. I'm with Ernst & Young, otherwise known as EY now, because we've rebranded. I'm a senior manager there, and I work in supply chains, sustainable procurement, and system dynamics.
Okay. Just on some of our comments earlier, if you want to talk about your past experience and how you've harnessed that to bring in working with clients now at E&Y.
So I actually have been with E&Y for approximately 5 months. I was at the General Services Administration, which is a government procurement agency, and there I started the work on utilizing procurement and the federal supply chain as a way to make organizations more resilient and more sustainable. So in essence, bringing it down to what are you asking of your suppliers as you procure from them or you contractually engage with them. Similar then to the work that I do at EY, I'm looking at a supply chain, and the way that you make it sustainable is that you make your suppliers do things differently than they're probably doing right now. So it's figuring out what are those things that they should be doing differently, and how does that fit into either resiliency of the supply chain, which is securing it, making yourself more secure, or even making it more sustainable, so energy or water efficient and so forth.
What are you seeing are the top risks in supply chains around the world currently?
You know, I wish I'm going to have a fancier answer than the top risk right now is that most organizations don't even know what their climate or sustainability risk is, because one of the things that they haven't had to know in the past is location information, or what we call place-based risk. So you really are only going to be at risk for increased weather events if you know where those are. You're only really increased risk for natural resource non-availability is if you know where that supplier is. So most organizations, especially the large ones that you would think know or have geographically mapped their supply chain, haven't. So the biggest risk to major organizations is they don't know the risk that they have.
In some of the findings from the NDGAIN scientists, they're saying that it's going to take about a century for developing countries to reach the level of readiness we experience here in the developed world. So based on that information, if you can give some examples of what you've seen in working with some of your clients who are based in more developing parts of the world, and give any specific examples or advice that you would pass on to those clients.
So I appreciate the finding. I think what the finding, of course you can't forecast certain actions that aren't happening now, so we really haven't imbued the corporations with an understanding of this risk, right? I just said that they don't know where that risk is, but they're aware that they need to know. As they understand where they're operating the types of risk, they will, for their own self-interest, take actions to mitigate that risk. So many of the things, especially when you're talking about sustainable sourcing, there's only certain areas that you can source certain commodities. Cocoa was talked about, really 4 prominent areas. One of those areas, Cote d'Ivoire, is an area that was rather ranked lowly on the gain. And so companies are putting a lot of money into that particular area, and actually as you see them commit that money, I think you're going to really shorten that time frame of 100 years to a much smaller time frame.
That's great news. And in your work, getting to know the Notre Dame Global Adaptation Index, using it as an assessment tool, are there any examples that you can give or projections on how you think companies could use that tool?
Yeah, I think, companies, as they're becoming aware of, I'm in a risky area, what are those risks? Why is, if I'm sourcing from a particular company sourcing from a particular country, or I have a major supplier or manufacturing firm, if I have a contractual relationship with them, now at least I know what to ask. How are you addressing this? If I know that's a concern known for in that particular country. And then I can hold them to certain standards. I myself as a company can drill down then and say, well, I knew to ask these questions. You actually do have risks in those particular areas. And so for me to do business with you, you're going to have to address those. And those are both environmental as well as, at times most importantly, socioeconomic concerns.